Okay, so breaking news, breaking news. I'm just trying to bring a stream to you now. I'm just going to switch forward and see the breaking news is that Mark McGowan is about to resign. He's announcing his resignation. Okay, I'm trying to bring you the sound through now. This is all unfolding live. We're just bringing you the breaking news. Mark McGowan is about to announce his resignation. Just bear with me while I push through the feed from the ABC.
I'd just like to acknowledge and thank a few people before I take some questions from you. To all my ministerial and caucus colleagues, thank you for the support over nearly 3 decades. The Cabinet team I leave behind is full of quality, experience and energy, ready to take the state forward. To my staff, can I pass on my deepest thanks and gratitude, especially my Chiefs of Staff as Premier, Guy Houston and Daniel Pastorelli, both brilliant people. To the West Australian branch of the Australian Labor Party, its members and affiliated unions, thank you. All of us in public life are nothing without the party and its members and supporters. I'll be forever grateful and very loyal. I am honoured to have led the WA Labor Party for as long as I have. To the WA public sector, its workers and leaders, thank you. The global pandemic that was COVID-19 forced us to change how we normally govern. The dedicated efforts of leaders in the WA public sector played a significant role in WA's world-leading response and management. So thank you very much. To the business community who have worked collaboratively with my government and helped make our economy as strong as it is today, thank you. To my political opponents, past and present, thank you for your contribution. People who take on a role in public life are taking on a responsibility that is deserving of our respect. To my family, can I pass on my love and thanks? Being Premier takes a huge toll on your family life. No one can do this job without the support and understanding of their family. To my wife Sarah and our 3 children, Samuel, Alexander and Amelia, thank you for everything over so many hard years. To Sarah's parents, Gwen and Neil, and her late brother Dean, thank you. To my mother and father, Dennis and Mary and Dennis, and my brother Michael, thank you so very much. To the people of this great state, thank you. Wherever you live or whatever you do or however you vote, thank you. It's been an absolute privilege to serve as the 30th Premier of Western Australia. I'm so grateful. I'll take some questions.
Was there a light bulb moment? I know you said you've been considering this a while, but was there something?
Yep, snaps.
Thanks, Jeff. Look, it sort of builds up over time. I didn't want to, I sort of worked out I didn't want to fight the next election. And so the next election is what, 20 months away or so.
Okay, I'm trying to bring you the video feed now behind the scenes. I'm pushing out the ABC stream, but Mark McGowan has announced that he is stepping down as WA's Premier. He's citing that he just simply does not have the energy to continue going forward. In essence, Mark McGowan has done a Jacinta Ardern from nowhere. He's just announced that he is resigning.
In one way or another for 30 years. So it's been the vast majority of my working life. You get, anyone who does the same job for 30 years, as you guys understand, would maybe get tired and maybe look to the future. 3 years as a Rockingham City Councillor, I'm very grateful for that, Deputy Mayor, and then 27 years basically as an MP. In that time, I've never been a backbencher, so it's full on. Premier, it's a great job. It's beyond anything I could ever have imagined would happen to me. I grew up, my mum and dad and my brother were wonderful. I grew up in little country towns in northern New South Wales, and the idea that one day become the Premier of Western Australia was so far.
Yeah, I'm trying to stream it. I've got to go.
I might as well become an astronaut. It's so ridiculous, the idea. But it happened to me, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And the state's been wonderful to me, and the people here are just so sweet and so wonderful. But I'm just exhausted by it.
Family aspects of it, you mentioned the fact that you missed out on a lot of that. Is there some sort of guilt that you want to try and make up for? Is that how you'll be spending your time now, all the family time?
Yeah. I don't know if I put it that way. No, it's not that way. It's just, you do spend a lot of time away, but a lot of people do. When I was in the Navy, I used to stand on the wharf because I was I was never posted to a ship. But I stand on the wharf, and the men and women on the ships would sail away for 6 months. 6 months. My life's nothing like that. Nowhere near as difficult. And there's a lot of people in FIFO or industry or whatever it might be who have much tougher lives than me. But, you basically, when you do the same thing and you do it for a long period of time, you sometimes get tired of it. You get tired. Not tired of it, tired. So, I need to recognise that. And because I didn't want to fight the next election, even though, as I said, I'm confident that we'd be successful, I had to pick a time, and we just passed the state budget. A lot of things have been done. Now is as good a time as any.
So I think you'd like to see you detail on the timeline of this decision and what's next?
I'll leave Parliament and leave the role by the end of this week. It's then up to my colleagues to select my replacement, and I'm sure they've got lots of great people to choose from, as you can see. In terms of what next for me, I'm going to have a break. So I'm going to have a break for a while. I don't know what else I'll do. I don't want to finish work completely. Once I'm rested and recuperated, I'll look for something else to do. Yeah, it was a few months ago, but I had to do the budget. And you might recall, I went to China and a few things like that. But I sort of made that decision, and it was about a matter of timing, whether I did it in the middle of the year or at the end of the year. But once you make a decision in your head, it's hard to then hold out, implementing it. And I wanted to also make sure that my successor has enough time to embed and understand the role. And, they're very experienced, all the people around me, very experienced ministers and so forth, but being the Premier, it's sort of got that 7-day-a-week, every waking hour aspect to it. And so, it takes a little while to understand that and to get yourself used to it and make sure that you're prepared for what may come.
You said you retired 16 as Premier and then for Rockingham.
I'm sorry, mate.
If you have a preference of who succeeds you as Premier?
I'll leave that to my colleagues, and I'll leave that to the party.
You say that you're tired, you're burnt out. From our perspective, that doesn't, I've not seen any of that in the lead-up. Where has that kind of been manifesting in your life? Like, how long has that been kind of dragging on you?
Well, I'm glad you didn't see it. I'm very pleased. Shows that I've hidden it well. Well, sleepless nights. Excess worry about things. The COVID experience, that basically 3 years of every day standing here or wherever it might be, having to deal with all that and all the pressure that was associated with that drained me a lot. But just being the Premier it drains you. I'll tell you something. I'm not naturally a combative person. I don't think I'm naturally a combative person. I'm not naturally confrontational. But every day, I have to engage in argument and debate and confrontation in one way or another. And I'm kind of tired of it. So that's political life. If you don't want to do that, don't get into politics. And so I'm tired of that endless confrontation and the endless, being frustrated about things or issues or whatever it might be. So it's probably better for me now that I say farewell before I start showing it.
What words would you use to describe that almost 30 years? Like, how do you think that's about?
How would I describe it? It's been wonderful. Wonderful. I was interested in politics as a kid. I liked reading the newspaper. My dad in particular was a strong Labor supporter. Even though we grew up in small businesses, he was he always had an idea of being fair to everyone, my dad. And he was always really strong on that and really, talked about past political leaders, in particular, Gough Whitlam and Bob Hawke and people like that. So I had the interest as a young guy. As it turned out, I never actually expected it to amount to anything, but it did, and I'm very grateful for that. I couldn't have imagined anything better. It's just been a wonderful experience, done the best I can. I'm pretty much spent now, so I'll hand over to someone else.
What do you think will be remembered? How do you want to be remembered?
Well, that's for others, really. Others decide that. I just
Interesting question. How does Premier Mark McGowan wish to be remembered? Comment below as to what you think. How do you think Mark McGowan should be remembered, in particular for the last 3 years and what he has done to the state of Western Australia and those that call Western Australia home?
A whole range of other social reforms that will make the state stronger and better. But I'll be able to see it. I just won't be at the press conference, that's all. So, those things are good. How do you want to be seen? I suppose as an achiever would be the main thing. Someone who made the state stronger and better.
Maybe we often hear that some legacy is for others to decide. Are there any achievements that you look to specifically as ones that you would like to be remembered as legacy of your political career?
Probably the ones I read out to you in my opening statement. There's so many things you do in political life. I was a minister, you might not, you probably don't remember, James, but I was a minister back in the 2000s and did lots of things in the education and racing gaming and environment portfolios. I was minister for 3.5 years back then. And now as Premier, the government's done lots of good things. I just wanted to leave the state better than I found it. That's all I wanted to do. And do good things along the way. Politics is about doing good things. If you can do good things, if you can make life better, if you can fix future problems, if you can use your skills and abilities to improve the place for the long term, because we really should think long term, well, then that's a good thing. I'm very proud of the, I think I'm kind of known more for economic things, all the things in terms of
the public finances and economic activity and all that sort of thing. I think that's something I'm kind of known for. I'm actually very proud of some of the environmental things. Like it's going to be 5 million additional hectares in national and marine parks by the end of this term, and not cutting down forests anymore. Very proud of that. Proud of some of the social things. We did this scheme, I was thinking about it this morning, we did this scheme to ensure that a foster child gets supported to the age of 21. Previously they were only supported to the age of 18, so now their family will get financial support. So if you're a foster kid, you can stay in care till 21. A lot of those things have been done, a lot. And, they all pass by because governments do so much, but there's certain things that, made a difference. I was very proud to actually be part of the government that built the railway to my electorate back, 15 years or so ago. Those sorts of things are great. I want to especially acknowledge the people of Rockingham. They've been great to me, just great. Couldn't have imagined anything more. Rockingham's just a great city and great people, and they've been very good to me.
No one's irreplaceable, apparently. But most people would say that for the next election, you not being there will take some shine off the Labor Party, and you will be a loss.
I don't think that's true. There's some great people behind me, and sorry, I don't think that's true. There's some great people here, and I'm sure whoever the Premier is will do a great job.
Will you be advising the new leader in any capacity? Will you be there to offer some advice or
the answer to that is I'm a phone call away. So if people want my assistance or advice, they can ring me. But I'm not going to be one of those people that, is always on the TV or calling up or harassing or any of those things. They're a very experienced group. They know what to do.
Just when it comes to your future, do you have your eyes on maybe the corporate world and ambassadorship, maybe Cinema's presenter?
Replacing Koshi. How'd I go replacing Koshi? What do you think? Will I be able to do that? I could become the coach of Richmond. There's a few opportunities out there. No, look, I don't have any plans, but I don't want to stop work. So I'll see what the future holds, but I don't have any plans. I discussed it with no one.
Is there anyone who's trying to
leave the house 5 minutes ago?
So is there anyone who tries to talk you out of this decision?
No, not really. I told some of the cabinet ministers this morning. They just said if you're tired and had enough, which I am, that's your call.
And did you call on anyone for advice before making the decision?
Just my family and some of my staff.
Are you leaving the role, Premier, with any regrets at all?
No, not really. There's always things you think you could have done better, but I don't want to dwell on those. In life, and I do this, you dwell too much on what you do wrong rather than what you do right. And so I don't want to be one of those people. I've got to get out of that mindset of thinking I should have done this better or should have done that better. Lots of us, all of us are like that, really. You're probably like that. It's not the best way to be. You should probably focus on what you've done right and not have regrets, because you can't change what's in the past anyway.
There'll inevitably always be conspiracy theories with announcements like these. So we put those to bed now. There's nothing more to...
This is the reasons, as I've said.
Any advice for your successor on how to avoid that being exhausted by the...
Well, it's hard to do. It's hard to avoid. The thing about it is, it is all-consuming. It's not a normal job. It's not a normal role. Being a minister is not a normal role. Not a normal job. It is all-consuming. So I can't give advice on that because I haven't been very good at balancing things. So I hope whoever my successor is better at it than me.
COVID obviously had its demands, but in the year or two post that period, the government's faced a lot of criticism over Banksia Hill hospitals. Was that a different kind of work, or did that wear down on you in a different kind of way?
Well, what I found over COVID was there's lots of criticism as well. It's just part of the role. There's endless questions and endless conflict and criticism. You just have to be prepared for that. But frankly, I don't want to deal with that sort of conflict and confrontation and criticism anymore.
Yeah,
So
haven't been good at
I don't want to deal with that anymore. So I'm just
That's why you're here today.
tired and looking forward to doing something else. I'm going to wrap up in a moment. So well, that's up to them. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So that's Mark McGowan leaving the stage to applause there, Premier of Western Australia for at least the rest of the week, announcing that he's stepping back from politics, resigning as Premier and as an MP, and that will happen by the end of the week. He was flanked by his cabinet and by his wife as he made that announcement, saying that he's leaving because he's exhausted. Mark McGowan has been in public life for 30 years, and he said it had been a privilege to serve. Let's get more on this. Joining us now from Perth is Nadia Mitsopoulos, the host of Mornings on ABC Radio Perth. Hi there, Nadia. Hello, Rose. Hello. Was there any clue that this was coming?
Not really, but the timing is no surprise. I think when we got the media alert this morning saying there was an announcement at Duma House with no detail, then the rumours started to circulate. The timing, I don't think, is much of.
So there we go. Premier Mark McGowan has announced his shock resignation that you've just heard. Sorry for the audio in the initial part. I was sitting here at the studio doing some work on an edit, and then that news broke. So I tried to bring a stream as quickly as you could, and never a dull day at the studios of Freedom Media WA. And an interesting day there. You saw, of course, John Quigley in the background. It should be remembered that, let me just kill this audio. So it should be remembered there that Mark McGowan is one of 3 politicians under the old scheme. If he resigns, that he gets an astronomical amount, a salary, a lifetime salary. I think it's in the order of about $250,000 a year. The third politician is John Quigley. And of course, recently, the third politician to resign and get the massive golden handshake thanks to the public purse was Alana McTiernan. So there you go. There's no sympathy lost in terms of that. The effects, the financial effects to the West Australian public, apart from the train wreck, as I mentioned, you may have heard, just talking about the RATS test alone, you're looking at the Health Department budgeted $3 million, and Mark McGowan blew that out to $580 million of the West Australian public purse. And then you also have things like the Perth Mint. We still don't know, and it'd be an interesting question. Will we ever know the actual financial costs down the track? Because I'm sure legal implications will take a lot of time to actually resolve and get to the bottom of the extent of how much the West Australian taxpayer is on the hook for the dealings that were revealed by Four Corners, Tainted Corners, the Tainted Gold story. So, and now we have Mark McGowan resigning on at least $250,000 plus a number of other perks because he falls under an old parliamentary scheme. Now, I'm not sure, don't quote me, whether Mark McGowan actually instigated the killing off of that particular scheme for parliamentarians, that they just don't get that. But it's certainly, I do understand that he had a rather large play in it. And if you just look at when that particular deadline came in for the golden handshake, again, the public purse will be paying for $250,000 ongoing. You have John Quigley and you have Alana McTiernan, all Labor. So it was something that that the 3 old timers of Labor's sake were stood around and would know that at the end of the day, with the cost of living crisis and things like that, it really doesn't impact on him at all. So I'm just seeing the comments coming through. So I apologise for that, bearing with me that it's been rather manic to try and bring you this stream. I know that there was probably no picture. It was cutting in and out at the first, and I just had to do a jury rig behind the scenes and just set this up to stream directly from the ABC. So I caught wind of it about 5 minutes before the press conference. Of course, when I'm sitting in here in the studios, Freedom Media Studios, doing edits and the like and building stories, I have the ABC on, and I'm not sure what the other broadcasters do, but there you go. Mark McGowan has resigned. I'm just turning my head, apologise for that, to look at some of your comments. I might actually just try and drop that onto this screen, and then I don't have to turn my head as far, and we can see. So there's certainly a lot to be told about this, and it's come out of the blue. I did make reference to Jacinda Ardern, who cited a very similar line, that she no longer has the passion. And I guess take that on well, whichever way you wish to take that yourself. Do you think that Mark McGowan has actually lost the passion? It was interesting to note some of the comments that he made mention of there, that he says that he doesn't like to come to work and fight every day. Certainly the last 3 years, it seems the popularity polls at the very outset of the pandemic, he went from 96% to the last poll that I know was published was sitting at around 63.5% or somewhere around there, a significant drop. And of course, we have not seen, thanks to Mark McGowan's old mate, Kerry Stokes at Channel 7, we have not seen any other polls, published polls. The media in Western Australia has been very, very controlled. It was interesting to hear Jeff Parry from 7 News at the press conference, who has done a lot to push the narrative of Mark McGowan. Certainly very good to push a story when you have somebody that's prepared to tell your story, that is Mark McGowan's story, to the West Australian public through the massive 7 Media Group platform. And we've seen the comments that the likes of Jeff Parry, which really was a massive step away from how he would have started his journalism career. So I can see the comments still coming through. There's still some people watching. Those that have just joined the stream, you'll see by the lower third on the bottom of the stream, Mark McGowan has just announced that he has resigned. He said he will be leaving Parliament by the end of this week. It's Jacinda Ardern resignation take 2. In this time it's Australia. So there has been very strong rumours that I'm hearing, with pressure being put on Dan Andrews, the Labor parliamentarian, Dan Andrews over in Victoria, that he's saying also he's starting to leak and drip feed little snippets that he's a little bit tired. He's been doing this for a while, and he may or may not consider stepping down in August this year. You would have to question a person who did a tremendous amount of work to get re-elected, and well, let's not go down the whole, the questionable about some of the footage that we saw, particularly that came out from one Nathan, Mark Nason, that people were sending footage into him of what was happening at the ballot box. And so there we go. So Mark McGowan, State WA Labor Premier, has just announced he's resigned. Some of the comments there, I think I'm just going to pick up. There's one that's just come in. Alan's talking about his comment. He's destroyed the health system. He's left thousands homeless, and certainly, if not homeless, thousands actually struggling to actually forge their way forward on a daily basis due to the devastating mandates that Mark McGowan has introduced. Of course, all along it was touted that the NRMA vaccine was safe and the efficacy was near 100%, and we now know that it's just simply not that. And we can see, of course, you have the pandemic inquiry and there's no outcomes in relation to that. So has the pandemic inquiry actually got to a level that it's looking ominous for some of the decisions that Mark McGowan made? Pure speculation, I guess, but it's certainly plausible to draw that type of conclusion. Alan, as you say, there's no doubts. I mean, I'm still getting people from the healthcare nurses, social workers, mental health workers, nursing assistants, hospital staff, doesn't matter what the role is, from cleaners, which is no less important because without having a place to perform surgery, these people that come in and do an amazing job to keep the surgeries, the theatres going, through to doctors, still contacting this channel saying that they chose the anti-mandate and pro-choice option, and they're applying for a number of jobs in Western Australia to get back into the healthcare system. But the stumbling block seems to be that they are still heavily discriminated because it's coming up at re-engagement interviews, the vaccine status. Although it shouldn't, the pandemic has been declared as no longer in existence by the World Health Organization. And again, I just simply say that without getting into the politics of what the WHO is. All those that would be watching would well know what the WHO say. And again, Alan, just following up with that comment that he's almost ruined the state of Western Australia. And I guess, that would be an interesting thing. Not only healthcare nurses, as I was talking about, trying to re-engage back into the employment form, but they can't because they're being discriminated. I'm also contacted on a regular basis by those that are looking to re-engage and be deployed on BHP sites. BHP, of course, held out the mandate until they held an internal survey in February this year, and then they announced in March that they consider, due to their risk analysis, that it is no longer appropriate to hold the mandates on their mining sites. Of course, those that got in front of the game at the very start, the likes of your Rio Tinto and your FMGs, scooped up all of the non-vaccinated workers well before BHP, because they still were implementing, that's BHP, the mandates, and now they're screaming, absolutely screaming for workers, and they can't get them. And we see a number of other geopolitical and social issues, like bringing in foreign workers into all states of Australia, not just unique to Western Australia. Sure, there's a skills workers shortage here in WA. However, when you still have, off the record, you still have the hospital system discriminating against healthcare workers on any form, and some mine sites, I'm still hearing BHP are doing it, discriminating against those that took the pro-choice, anti-mandate route, that they are being discriminated from re-engaging into employment. Sure, international workers would have left Australia, and in particular WA, because Mark McGowan made it such that you couldn't get out once he closed the borders. So there's, it's another comment there. I'm just trying to, some backgrounds. You're talking about, the case of the Indigenous peoples there. That's Jessica that's just commented there. The genocide that's applied there. I understand what you're saying there, Jessica. I'm not really sure on the ins and outs of that, so I probably won't comment too much. But it's fair to say you've seen Mark McGowan and the handling of what he's done at Banksia Hill in particular, with a lot of the Indigenous, those that find themselves, on the wrong side of law, have found themselves locked up at the disposal of the state. Now, that doesn't mean that gives the state the right to treat them inhumanely, and a lot of the rioting that we've seen over the past couple of months at the detention centre is simply because these juveniles are being treated and held in absolutely appalling conditions, and conditions as a democratic nation, a democratic state, that if you were to look at some of the conditions that some of these youths were being held in at Banksia Hill Detention Centre, and the way that they've been treated and held in isolation for long period of time, you would find in any UN convention that it would contravene human rights conventions, no questions about it. So there we go. Just to recap, Mark McGowan has announced a shock resignation. He did cite in his press conference that he was glad that the media weren't able to pick up any clues, that he was tired. Many people are tired, and I guess many people would like the opportunity to front up to work one day and say, you know what, I'm actually tired of doing this. I've been doing it for a number of years, 21 years. But as I've said, he falls under one of three state politicians who gets a golden handshake. It's a massive golden handshake. Actually, what I might do is I might just, while I'm doing this, just see if I can bring up, see if I can find it so that I can put up for... so while I do that, I'll try and read. Yep, so here we go. I'm going to just pop this up on the screen. So it is $250,000 every year for the rest of his life. So I'm going to just pop that up so that you can see that. Let me cut to it. So there we go. We've got that up there. And Ben Harvey actually covered this some time ago. But just looking at the headlines there, that take what you take from Ben Harvey. But as I said, it's talking about every year. I'm just highlighting it now. A salary of $250,000 a year for the rest of his life if he left Parliament today. This article, when was this article? Let's have a look at this. I mean, it's no secret. It's been known for some time that has been the particular benefits. Again, John Quigley gets that, and Alana Martinen, who also just stepped down, 4 months ago, she also gets that. The taxpayers of WA have that there. So let's look at some of the other things. The media are talking about his time in politics, but what really counts is perhaps the last 3 years. Oh, here's another article here. So you can just see, this is back Hamish Hastie, who's certainly been, on both sides of the fence during the pandemic, certainly been keen to call out the pro-choice anti-mandates. But Mark McGowan's set for life. He is on the pension gravy train and will have opportunities for the rest of his life that others won't. So there's just some of the headlines there. I did want to come back to another one here. And these are some of the things that have started to pop up in recent times. Of course, we covered this on Freedom Media. I'm just bringing this up now, just making sure that you can see it, which you can, that Mark McGowan didn't know the Perth Mint workers were paid millions in bonuses amid a crackdown on public sector wages. The Perth Mint saga is not over. It's absolutely not over by any shape or form, and it would just, it really doesn't, it doesn't end in relation to that. I'm trying to keep an eye on some comments to try and pick up so many comments. Thank you to those that have jumped on the stream. I apologise at the very beginning. Those that started, it was blacking in and out because I heard the news and I thought, hell's bells. I need to just get up a stream to restream the coverage from the ABC of Mark McGowan announcing that. A comment there from Claudia Mazzoni. I'm just going to pick up on that. Can't wait for Clive Palmer to step back in. Now, and I guess we all knew the campaign that Mark McGowan ran and Labor ran at a state level, but federally against Clive Palmer in this state. A lot of people are still under the misconceptions that Clive Palmer was going to bankrupt, as Mark McGowan said, the state of Western Australia to the tune of $30 billion. Now, that is far from the truth, as we've seen that. And those that have looked into this particular issue, and I have, and I've certainly reached out to Clive Palmer to get a comment, but because of mainstream media, he has given an undertaking that at one day he will talk about it, but just not right now. But Clive Palmer won 2 arbitrations that said there was damages that needed to be paid, and you were looking at about around about the $280 million mark, which was what was really owing, and that's a fair percentage short, a fair amount of coin short of the $30 billion that Mark McGowan said. I'm just going to bring this back again. The ABC are just putting back on. I will just cut back to me while I do that. They're just replaying the announcement so those that can see it. Okay, while I do that, so it was just a fear tactic and a campaign that Mark McGowan implemented to say that if he hadn't stepped in, here we go. I'm just going to bring this back to you.
As a young naval officer, when I drove across the Nullarbor in my Corolla in June 1991 to begin my posting at Garden Island, I never imagined I would one day become the Premier of Western Australia. When I was elected as Premier, I had ambitions for our state. I wanted Western Australia to become the strongest, most successful state in the nation, to become more economically diversified and have the strongest public finances, to be socially reformist with landmark achievements in conservation and environmental protection as well, to provide our citizens with quality public services and long-term infrastructure for our long-term future. I stand here today and I know our state is in the position I set out to reach. We have the strongest economy in Australia and one of the strongest in the world.
Mark McGowan there. Well, WA State Political Reporter Keane Burke joins us now from Perth. Hi there, Keane. So this news came out, less than an hour ago. What's been the reaction then, both from the State Labour Party and from the opposition?
Well, we still haven't really heard from the opposition because it is so early and it was such a shock announcement that across the board there's just been nothing but praise for Mark McGowan's time at the top of WA. Even through the COVID pandemic, he still had a massive list of highlights that he could rattle off from his time in office, all of those achievements that he was so proud of, and I'm sure for the coming days we're just going to see more praise from across the board. He obviously had his disputes with the opposition.
Kill that audio, cut back to me. I just need to wait for it to catch up in the headphones so I don't have the echo from the stream. But mainstream media, just watching in a quick scan between all of the channels, they are talking about all of Mark McGowan's achievements, which is absolutely no surprise. Nobody is prepared to talk about the recent findings of the General Auditor of the State of Western Australia, looking at the RATS test, for example. Go into any shopping centre. They even had Optus Stadium now. They cannot give away the RATS test because of the amount that Mark McGowan approved. As Treasurer, the buck stops with him. The Health Department initially implemented the RAT scheme for healthcare workers and international travellers to do a quick means test to present to work to keep the hospitals going and those coming back into Australia. $3 million was the budget. He blew that out to $580 million. And you're still talking about, I'm hearing, I wouldn't say confirmed reports, but I'm hearing a number of reports from reliable sources saying that currently there's still 10 warehouses in Perth, Western Australia that are full almost to the roof with the RATS test. That's how many have been spent and have purchased, I should say. And of course, you're then looking at trying to give them away. They can't give them away. It doesn't matter, what are they going to do with them? It's a tremendous amount to put in landfill. So a few more comments there. I'm just going to minimise this screen so that I can hear myself think. I'll just keep that running in the background. But some of the schemes and some of the things, that Mark McGowan is saying and mainstream media are talking about that he is particularly proud of, but there's no talk about. This is the recent event. The Auditor General made some scathing comments about his fiscal management of the RAT schemes, for example. So I can still see a number of people on the stream Hopefully you're finding some of this content here. I'm going to try and come back to some of the comments and let's make it a little bit interactive. Excuse the setup. This came up quite quickly for those that have joined, and I scrambled to try and push the stream out. Russell's talking about, that he should be jailed for authorising medical experiments on children, untested gene therapy without explanations or details. So, and if you look back in history, history will show that from the outset, those that were pro-choice, anti-mandate, knew that this was an experimental gene therapy, and we're still, mainstream media are scrambling. They're still scrambling to keep the lid on this, and you're just starting to see a few cracks in the screens. Of course, there is a class action Australia-wide that's being led, and of course, those that still may doubt, or those that want additional confirmation, in Perth, Western Australia on June the 10th, tickets will go on sale this Wednesday. You will have, and I'm just going to see if I can bring this up in the background while I'm doing this for you. Just bear with me, and I'll try and sort of talk through both options. And we'll minimise that and just see if I can bring up. So yeah, I'm talking about Dr. Aseem Malhotra, a world-leading cardiologist who has been talking about health, lifestyle, and coaching some elites or giving medical advice to elite athletes around the world. And I just want to kill this audio that's coming through so I can hear myself think. And tickets will go on sale this Wednesday, as I understand. Dr. Aseem Malhotra coming to Perth, Western Australia. He's currently in Australia, and he has already done a couple of talks. I think the first one was on Saturday night. For those that really just want confirmation, firstly you have to have a look at the journey. Again, not confirmed, but I do have from a reliable source that they have, that is the federal government, have done a tremendous amount to try and stop Malhotra, as they did with Dr. Peter McCulloch, to stop him coming into Australia and to stop them talking about... now, these are, when you talk about science, there's two sides to science, and these brave, I guess, people from the medical profession have decided enough is enough. This is actually extremely damaging, and they are going to provide the science behind people or tell people as to why. So let me just see if I can find that flyer, and I'll pop that up on the screen. Maybe not. Just on a first hand, there is a flyer there. I can see ABC still cutting in the background. I just need to bring up the stream to see what you guys are seeing, because I've lost that screen. Where are we? Okay, so I know where you are. I know where I am. There we go. I've got it there. I will have the press conference running in the background, and if they do any other thing comes up, I can just... So there we go. I just want to bring up your comments live so that I can see them coming forward. We can hear okay. Thank you very much for that feedback. A lot going on, as you can probably see. Just a quick jury rig, because I did hear this quickly, as I've already mentioned. So some more comments. Let's have a look at... Oh, okay, they can't hear. Oops. Can't hear, can hear. Maybe just a quick comment if I can. Can you hear this audio? Testing audio. It looks like I've got audio going out. I think I do. So Pat raises an interesting comment there in terms of he's going to need a big pension to pay for all of the court cases coming his way. Of course, you would say, speculation, but at the end of the day, I guess governments, state governments and federal governments did deals with Pfizer with completely no liability whatsoever, and therefore it would come back to directions. And if you're looking at mandates and the impacts of mandates and what's happened with that, then it would come down to the roles that state premiers have, and that increases their culpability. And that will come down to looking at documentations and what did particular information and documentation particularly say. We know that that MLC Nick Guerin, in question time, and we've put that out on this stream here, established with Stephen Dawson, the Emergency Services Minister, that Stephen Dawson was not even aware of the health advice that the Chief Health Officer, Dr. Andrew, can't even think of that clown's name now, the guy with the beard, when he was trying to tell people to wear masks, and the news reporter at Parliament House asked him, being not clean shaven, is that going to impact on the seal on the mask? And of course, he just cut the press conference and walked out. Middleton, is it? Andrew? No, I can't even think what his name is. So that would certainly. So we know, as I say, Nick Guerin, established with the Emergency Services Minister, Stephen Dawson, I should say, that he didn't get a copy of the health information. Whether that's a political tactic to minimise, who knows, or not, I don't know. It would make sense to that if you didn't actually get that. But if you're responsible of a particular portfolio and you're locking the state down in a state emergency that was rolling every 2 weeks, you would think, as the minister responsible, you would want to at least cast your eyes over that. But then if you think back to the Kill the Bill that happened back in October last year, and the state government, McGowan, who's just resigned, his Labor government, all of his MPs, we door-stopped a number of them to ask him if they were comfortable with legislation coming through that if a pandemic declaration can be or was declared, that they're comfortable that police without a warrant can burst into your home and then give you a direction to undertake a medical procedure. And of course, those that commented said they were, and those that didn't put their heads down and walked off. So, and I just wanted to come back and pick up a comment. Somebody was just saying then that they didn't know about David Koch. So the Kochie from the Sunrise Morning Show announced last week that he's resigning. And I was trying to sort of consider whether I was going to do something on that, but there was too much to do. There's still a number of people watching this, so I'll just see. It will comment below, I guess, if there's, or can we turn the mic up? So we'll try that a little bit, maybe. Hopefully that's a little bit better there. So I've got sort of two mics. Two mics going, so that if I do come back and bring up the ABC, which I have running in the background on the live stream, I'll just quickly cut to that now. Because this stream came about, it came about very quickly because I wasn't prepared for this. I heard it, I heard the story, and I would never get into the press conference because I've tried twice to get in a parliamentary press pass, and it's actually Mark McGowan himself. Maybe I should try again. Mark McGowan himself signs off on the press conference that passes, and he's done that. Anything inside, and he's refused, I should say. Anything inside Parliament, I can get we've seen it, we've gone there, and myself and the team, the dedicated team of volunteers behind Freedom Media, when we go, we see there, we've always conducted ourselves in a professional manner, and we go there to ask, reasonable and responsible. We're certainly not disruptive. and we go there and ask questions that mainstream aren't. So outside Parliament, if we were there, and I got a call saying there's something happening, can you get here? But even if I did scramble to get to Parliament, we wouldn't get inside, so we wouldn't have been able to get this. So a lot of comments, I guess. There would be, mixed reviews. I guess those that that see. So we just have Chris Means okay, or just missed that. The New South, the New South Wales Premier. Sorry. Yeah, New South Wales Premier just giving some comment there. I didn't quite hear that because I've got audio coming from two different ends. This is behind the scenes at the studio at Freedom Media. So Jimmy just commenting there, mint. The old saying, I'm old enough to remember the saying in the schoolyard, mintox. Who remembers that one, mintox? Yeah. So whether that's implying the Perth Mint, and there's probably more to be told there, and Mark McGowan's getting out while he still can, or not. So just a comment there that seems to be happening, looking at, you can't be charged once you leave Parliament. I guess, if it comes back to, from a legal aspect, how much parliamentary inquiry or parliamentary privilege plays into this, but you'd have to ask yourself this question from a legal viewpoint, that your culpability increases if you had information contrary to what you were telling the public. So if the information was that they knew that the vaccines were not going to stop transmission, but they've made a conscious decision to spin it and tell people that it will stop transmission, then I think even on a civil case that I feel, my understanding is that you will have a case to answer. You most definitely would have a case to answer, because that's malfeasance, and you have been truly, and maliciously, intentfully, willfully misled the public to the information. So, still people on the stream. I will cut backwards and forwards and just just talk about if I see some other commentary coming up there. I wonder if I wonder why I do this. I might just send a message and just see if I can get somebody to call into the studio that might be able to comment a little bit more. I'll just multitask while I'm doing that. Just send a message and just say. While I just send this this text off, I'll probably copy it because I'll send it off to a few people and see what comes back. Maybe there's a lot going on at their end as well. If this person chooses to speak, it would be great. I'm sure people would love to hear, and then I can put some of the questions that you're coming in as well. I'm just going to copy that message so that I can send it to someone else. We'll see what comes back of that. I might just turn. Okay, here we go. They're just cutting back again. I'm just going to cut back.
and helping people. But the truth is I'm tired, extremely tired. In fact, I'm exhausted. The role of political leadership doesn't stop. It's relentless. It comes with huge responsibility that is all-consuming each and every day. And combined with the COVID years, it's taken it out of me.
Okay, trying to see if I can fix the sound my end. Okay, according to this, it looks like I have got sound going out, so I'm sorry, bear with me.
Part of his nature, and it isn't something that he would be looking for. And I do think that was a very significant part of his success as Premier.
We have to leave it there. Jim McGinty, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. Very early there in London, I know. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ros.
That is ABC News for now. I'm Ros Childs, just recapping that breaking news of the hour.
So not sure why the audio wasn't going out on that. It looked good here. I'm just trying to double check in case there's another cross. I like the comment there, Jim McGinty saying that for those that can't hear, a cow pat, that's from Russell, and was saying that he's stolen enough and he'll be running away like a mangy dog. I guess... how can you not laugh at a comment like that? I mean, really? Those, Mark McGowan, I don't know. you've seen his press conference by now, and there was a little bit of a quaver in his voice. But for somebody who really had that passion, was that a gun held to his head that he's been given his orders to go because there's things coming down the pipeline, and for the party they've realised, well, it's best we clean out the party house now. Exactly the same type of scenario with Jacinda Ardern, and that is that they knew coming up to the election that they need to do some housekeeping now with a chance for Labor to retain. Now, we can certainly see leading into the next election, who knows whether Labor will certainly have the stranglehold like they did the last election. But probably the best outcome from my viewpoint is that they certainly don't have I'm certainly just like I've got a couple of text messages coming in, so I'm just going to see if I can get a guess to see if I can actually set this up while we're doing this at the same time. And yeah, so the New South Wales Labor Party in New Zealand, the New Zealand Labor Party were looking at doing some housekeeping, and maybe that's the same format here. Who knows? It's pure speculation. But as I say, in my view, the best that you could hope for in Western Australia, bearing in mind that Mark McGowan was instrumental in putting in additional provisions that the smaller parties would make it very, very difficult for smaller parties to actually run again. You can pretty much take it that the Daylight Savings Party, Wilson Tucker, didn't make the qualifications to renominate. I think Legalised Cannabis Party here in Western Australia did. But the last thing you'd really want without these smaller, even though that they're one-issue parties, they are nonetheless a voice, and we've certainly been able to get comment from Dr. Brian Walker. We've been able to get comment from Sophia Mormon from the Legalised Cannabis Party, and Wilson Tucker as well, in particular around the Kill the Bill. And the last thing you would really want is a Labor-Liberal two-party in one state with no opposition. So could this be the rise of independence coming up for this next election, March 2025? Very good question that Belinda's just popped in. Mark McGowan had a recent trip to China, and here we are. So I mean, I'm sure people have their view as to what he was doing over there, and but we do know, he went over there and he made some comments about Andrew Hastie, that he got caught with a hot mic. He also made some comments about saying that the National Cabinet, which again I remind people that a couple of years ago, and Rex Patrick, then the independent in South Australia, established through a High Court decision that National Cabinet is not constitutionally recognised, yet they still hold National Cabinet now, and that's where we saw a lot of the unified decisions from National Cabinet in relation to mandates and border closures being rolled out across Australia. So I'm just about talking myself dry here. Still looks like some people are interactive with the comments. Dancing in the streets is what I'm hearing. And a lot of questions around who's going to step in and who's going to replace Mark McGowan. I don't see it being Quigley. There was a comment earlier about Roger Cook, and I think the whole thing of Roger Cook managing the death of, I'm just trying to think, that he was sidestepped. He was definitely sidestepped. I think it would not be a good move, in my view, for Labor to bring Roger Cook back to the forefront with a Alana Mateenan gone. Will Labor go with a female with the likes of Rita Scafidi? She is certainly on the front bench for Labor. Who would it be? So comments coming up now. I'm just looking here. Anthony Albanese's just released a statement saying that he's been a great premier of his proud state. I'll just see if I can bring this up now for you. And has been a trusted friend. Above all, Mark, okay, I've just missed that. Sorry for that.
Minister Patrick Gorman is here. Welcome back, Patrick. And Liberal Senator Linda Reynolds joins us here in the studio. Welcome to you too, Linda. The legacy question, first of all, what is...
Okay, I might just cut to this because we have on the ABC studio Patrick Gorman.
He did have an incredible role of leadership during COVID, where he stood up for what was right and he stood up for what he believed in. I think your viewers remember him standing up from time to time against Clive Palmer and many others. Yeah. And he just showed others how to do the job of being a great premier, standing up for your state. I've enjoyed campaigning alongside him for many years, and I'm sure every now and then he'll still maybe come out and hand out how to votes for me.
Well, I'm sure he'll appreciate those remarks. I might get some further thoughts from you on what might actually lie ahead for Mark McGowan in the future, but he did all of that, didn't he, Linda, would you acknowledge, to devastating effect politically. I don't know whether you want to start on where the Liberal Party is at. I was hoping to get there in a few moments, but maybe the same question, an open one about legacy. What do you acknowledge?
Well, first of all, I wish him well as a cabinet minister with key responsibilities for COVID. I know just how tough that period was for all politicians, federal and state. So I do wish him well. It is a bit of a surprise. But I think what today will mark is a fundamental transformation in the politics in Western Australia, because we will go from the politics of the single person, the cult of the personality, which has really sucked the oxygen out of the political debate in Western Australia, because it has been all about one man. And
That's quite a compliment to Mark McGowan.
Well, it might be a compliment to him being a great politician, but it's come at the great detriment to the state of Western Australia. So you asked me about the WA Liberals. So with Libby Mettam,
absolutely,
who is
it's come to a detriment to the people of Western Australia.
Focusing on the issues that matter. And there is not a single social indicator of which the state government is responsible for, whether it's public housing, health, education, policing, juvenile justice, roads. There is not a single indicator that he has left things better in 6 years than he inherited it. So Patrick was certainly gilding the lily, because Metronet has not delivered a single train yet. Yeah. The only one that has is the one that we started. So it's over time, over budget, and now will be an opportunity for both parties to really focus on the issues that matter in Western Australia.
Well, let's not slug it out over each and every debating point around the legacy, but if I can zero in, Patrick, on the pandemic, as an Eastern State person at the time, it seemed hardline and resolute, but he absolutely tapped into the mentality of West Australians at that time. That's never to be repeated, though, by his successor, whoever that might be, is it? Because those circumstances were so unique at the last election.
Well, those circumstances during the COVID pandemic were unique. I mean, we backed in Prime Minister Morrison when he chose to close the international border. I mean, people had to make very difficult decisions, and some of them, were not popular at the time, and some of them have had some foreseeable and some unforeseeable consequences for the long run. But I think the people of Western Australia backed what Mark McGowan chose to do, the decisions him and his cabinet made. I do think, one of the legacies he leaves, amongst many others, is a very solid cabinet, some really talented ministers, and the biggest ever backbench that's ever been seen by...
Interesting comment when he says that the people of Western Australia have backed Mark McGowan. The people of Western Australia over the last 3 years had no choice.
Just on that pandemic question, the numbers speak for themselves, don't they? The numbers in the Parliament, the numbers that voters flocked to Labor with at the last election. There were some fundamentally rum calls made by the Libs.
Look, there is
gifted government to him.
There is no question that the combination of having a single, emperor type, other people have described him as a leader, but also with us not having our act together. We were far too focused on ourselves, and we didn't provide the viable alternative that we should have. But as I've said, we've learnt from that. We've had reviews, we've made constitutional change, and we are fundamentally reforming our party so that we can support Libby Mettam and really hold this terrible government to account, because there is not a single social factor and metric that this McGowan government has delivered, not one.
All right, those numbers, the metrics that I'm referring to, by the way, for those who don't follow WA state politics, 53 Labor MPs in the lower house in Western Australia, 4 Nats and 2 Libs. So that is one metric of his success. Heir apparent and replacement process, how does that work? Patrick Gorman?
Well, I'll be respectful of my state parliamentary Labor colleagues, and it is a decision for them in terms of who should choose to nominate. We're really proud here in terms of the processes that we have in the federal caucus, which were initiated more than a decade ago when Anthony Albanese was Deputy Prime Minister, which is to make sure that it's both the caucus and the members who have a say. And that was adopted under Mark McGowan's leadership for the West Australian branch as well. So it's a decision of both if there's a choice between some of those very talented ministers, depending on who puts their hand up, and that's a matter I'll leave to them. But if there's a choice, it's a choice of both the caucus members of the state party and the party members.
In equal weighting?
50-50.
50-50.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what people expect today. That's to give a good, strong mandate to whoever should take on that role, and to make sure that there's a diversity of voices in terms of who should choose that leader. But again, we're getting probably a little bit ahead of ourselves. We'll see who puts their hand up. I think anyone who does one of the first things they'll say is acknowledge the huge shoes there are to fill. But again, I'm confident that it's a great team. I've worked with so many of them closely over the years. I'm former State Secretary of the WA Labor Party. I know them well. It's a great team, and I think Mark has left the talent in the WA Labor Party in such a good position for what is an inevitable leadership transition. Yeah. These things happen at some point.
They do, and you wonder what sort of planning went on behind the scenes, because it was so shocking to so many. Linda, final process. You'd have to imagine, based on what Pat's just outlined there, that there'd be Labor people working towards a smooth, uncontested transition, wouldn't you?
Well, I'd imagine so, and I hope so for Western Australia that's the case. But I'd just like to pick up Pat's point that they're a nice team. Well, they might be a nice team and a large team, as you pointed out, but they have, after 6 years, they've left the state socially in a complete mess. So the problem of having the politics of a single leader means that he's left a void, because there is not a single obvious successor, and there is not a single member of the front bench who hasn't made their portfolio worse in terms of
She's
housing.
pulling no punches there.
Housing outcomes, policing have gone backwards, ramping. So every single social metric, and I noticed Pat wasn't able to identify a single metric. They've got a large surplus, but what have they done with it?
All right, well, the members will make a decision on that before too long, I imagine. Why don't we move on to The Voice? And Patrick Gorman, the Race Discrimination Commissioner, Chin Tan, has made a public appeal to keep race out of the unfolding debate on the Indigenous voice to Parliament. To whom do you think he was speaking while not naming any individual?
Well, I think we can all take a little bit of guidance from those remarks, which is that this is about recognition of the first peoples of this country. It is about the unique relationship that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have with this land we now call Australia. And it's about constitutional recognition, and it's about giving those people a voice to Parliament, recognising that unique circumstance of 65,000 years of continuous culture. Now, I do think, though, that if I imagine what was in the back of the minds of the delegates to the Uluru Dialogue, they probably knew that doing constitutional recognition would not be an easy path, but it was the path we had to take.
And do you think, Linda, that might have been an embedded reference there from Chin Tan to Peter Dutton having made that speech in the Parliament last week about re-racialising the country?
Well, I certainly hope not, because it is so important that we keep this debate civil, and ultimately this is not just about constitutional recognition. And I think Patrick has highlighted that the government are conflating constitutional recognition. And if they were really serious about constitutional recognition, like in 1967, you can have two questions, although in 67 they were different issues.
Sure.
But still, do you agree with constitutional recognition in section 51? Yes or no? I think that would get through in a canter, a bit like the 90% in 1967.
Yeah, but that's not the question.
No, and that is how the government is ultimately, I think, letting Australians down, because if they asked about constitutional recognition, it would have strong support. But by saying it has to be through this particular constitutional recognition of a voice.
Oh, can I have to correct you?
No, constitutional recognition through this particular type of voice, I think is wrong, because people should have the choice on both questions, because there are more than one model to have a voice.
On tone, and I will give Pat a right of reply in a moment, but are you worried personally about the tone, where it begins at, let alone where it ends by October or November?
Well, ultimately, I respect the Race Discrimination Commissioner, and he's got a right, obviously, to talk about this issue. But ultimately, we are talking about a race-based provision in our Constitution. My personal preference would be to get rid of any reference to race in our Constitution while having a constitutional recognition of our First People, but not having specific race-based rights. And, Australia is not a racist country. Of course, we have a small pocket of racists, but you can see through the debates in the Senate pretty much every day between our Indigenous senators that there is division, there is great division in the Indigenous community in this country, which is causing dissent. It is, and it's a shame, because it's a lack of leadership by the Prime Minister that he's forced this debate on our nation instead of having a constitutional convention.
All right, Patrick Gorman, I know you want to pick up on a couple of those points, but
let's just stay fact-based. Facts are that survey after survey shows the majority of Indigenous Australians support constitutional recognition through a voice. The fact is that our Constitution already has provisions in it that relate to race in sections 25 and 51. The fact is that this is not about race in recognition, it is about recognising the unique position of the First Nations of this country we now call Australia. And the fact is that this is not, as Linda has just tried to suggest, a government proposal. We have simply picked up the proposal from the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which was not delivered to Prime Minister Albanese and his government. It was delivered to Prime Minister Turnbull. And that request that was given to Prime Minister Turnbull was for a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament. There was 5 years there was 5 years that statement sat on the desk of former Liberal Prime Ministers who did nothing about it. We are simply responding to that request, and that request was to give the Australian people a chance to have a say. And we're going to do that.
And have you been to the Kimberley recently and talked to Indigenous communities? I have just over a week ago, and only one person in a week. I was up there with Jackie Lambie and some other senators, and the entrenched disadvantage is palpable. And the clear message from everybody is nobody is listening to us. We know what we need from the state government. We know how to get, in the Fitzroy Valley, what we need. But
none said a national voice would be the answer.
No, only one elder raised it with us and said, I support it because Pat Dodson told me it was important. Because people are saying they're not listening to us now. NAAA this week in estimates were saying, oh yes, we've done this fantastic job in the Kimberley, from Canberra, from Perth and from Broome. And they couldn't even tell us how much money is being spent in Indigenous communities for disaster relief. So the voice, rebadging the NIAA into a voice, is not going to make any difference to the lives of Aboriginals in Western Australia, and particularly in disadvantaged communities. And they know it.
Well, this is the fact-based debate that I suppose we'll try and conduct civilly as we can on this program. I no doubt we'll be returning to questions of tone and divisiveness as the months unfold.
So I'll just take the audio off there. I'm just trying to bring up a couple of things in the background there. And as you've heard, it has just ended in relation to The Voice on the back of this comments about Mark McGowan resigning. Of course, Patrick Gorman would be echoing exactly that of Albanese. And I'm just trying to bring up something, a piece. Last Sunday I had Joel Jamal from Turning Point Australia here in the studios. I will keep the camera just there so that I can just bring you the TV in case that's happened, because I've had to do it this way to get it for the audio, and I'm just trying to work out why we've got a little bit of echo in the background. That's it. Okay, that's the reason why. So I've just figured that one out. Yeah, so just in relation to The Voice, and one of the things that I was talking about with Joel Jamal, and there's plenty of comments that had come in saying that The Voice will be divisive. And I mentioned this in a stream some time ago, that Australia is one of the few democracies in the Western world that does not have a Bill of Rights. And independent MP, and just seeing the comment come up here, Penny, welcome from Melbourne. So it always blows my mind to just see the people that tune in and comment from all over the places. So thank you for joining. If I could get into the streets of Perth, you would see, hopefully, people jumping up and down, probably similar scenes to World War II, when they announced that the war was ending and people were dancing in the streets. Will there be a ticker tape parade? I don't know. But coming back to The Voice and the Bill of Rights, and why don't, as a Western democracy, a nation that calls us one of the free leading democracies, have a Bill of Rights? And Andrew Wilkie, the Tasmanian MP, sought to introduce not once but twice, and a Bill of Rights has been tabled to be introduced 3 times, as I understand it, dating back to 2002, but then going back to 2014, I think, and 2017 through to 19. And it was going for parliamentary debate, and then, of course, the pandemic kicked in, and that was the end of it. But the sticking point, as I understand it, Andrew Wilkie tabled a Bill of Rights that encompassed all of the things that The Voice seeks to achieve, enshrining, I guess, an Indigenous voice into the Bill of Rights. But it wasn't just based on First Nations people. It was for all Australians, and it had many, many fronts. Yeah, it does look like that. I'm just seeing the comment there. Belinda saying, you know, the lazy eye, almost like Bell palsy. So I'm really just going to try and get this out, what I'm trying to say. So Brett's saying that we have a Bill of Rights, and I would certainly say, Brett, if you feel that we do, then by all means, post a link. I'd be very interested to have a look at it. I don't believe that's the case. And I'll come back to Andrew Wilkie. And one of the sticking points that the Bill of Rights, his Bill of Rights failed, is because he included a part in the Bill of Rights that would enable the ordinary citizen, ordinary Australians, to take remedy, and that's a word that Rod Cullerton uses all the time, that we just don't have remedy, and what remedy there is, it's just way more it's harder to seek the remedy in the space that Rod Cullerton's talking about. But Andrew Wilkie was seeking to put remedy into the Bill of Rights, that if the government did something, for example, like we've seen with the mandates, and it caused a tort, a civil wrong to an individual, then they can hold the government, and they have a clear pathway in order to take on the government to make that wrong right. I do have, and if I can just find where it is. I do have some of the stuff from Andrew Wilkie when he went to introduce that particular bill, and if I can find it, I will seek to play it. And as we go, I'm just keeping an eye on what's happening in the background. You can see I've put a lower third on the bottom, but they're talking about bilateral talks with Korea. Let's just see. If I can find Andrew Wilkie. Okay, I do have it here, and I'm going to just look at bringing this up. But this is a stream that I had. Let me just cue this a little bit. So this is a little bit of a history, and this is an alternate view, I guess, as to. So I agree with what people are saying here, that we have the difference between the Commonwealth of Australia, the Constitution. I get all of that. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a specific dedicated Bill of Rights that we can have. So I did a stream with Michael Gray Griffins from Cafe Lockdown. The reason you're looking at this man here is because in order to get the audio, I've had to shift the camera around off the TV because the feed's not quite working. But I'm going to try and make that a little bit different for you. And in particular with this piece here. Let's just see.
Australia and for related purposes. And I call the member for Clark. Speaker, I move that this bill be now read a second time. Speaker, this bill would enshrine the fundamental rights of all Australians in Australian law. It's modelled closely on the Australian Bill of Rights of 2001, introduced by the then member for Caldwell, and is very similar to the Australian Bill of Rights of 2017, which I introduced. In essence, the bill would render invalid any Commonwealth, state or territory law that's inconsistent with the Bill of Rights to the extent of that inconsistent law. It would also specify that Commonwealth, state and territory laws should be interpreted so as to be also specified the Bill of Rights. The bill allows the Australian Human Rights Commission to inquire into any act or practice done by the Commonwealth or a state or territory government that may infringe on a right or freedom in the Bill of Rights. It also allows for people to make complaints to the Commission if they believe that Good morning, Speaker. I present...
Okay, I'm just sorry, people, there for the double feedback. I've worked out what that issue is. I'm going to take it back to the beginning. I see there's still a few people on the live stream. So this is my view, the Bill of Rights, and this is Andrew Wilkie back in Parliament 2019 introducing the bill. We'll try again, and hopefully I won't get that double echo.
Private members' business, notice number 1 for the Australian Bill of Rights Bill 2019.
And I call the member for Clark.
Good morning, Speaker. I present the Australian Bill of Rights Bill 2019 and the explanatory memorandum.
First reading, a bill for an act relating to the human rights and fundamental freedoms of all Australians and all people in Australia and for related purposes.
And I call the member for Clark.
Speaker, I move that this bill be now read a second time. Speaker, this bill would enshrine the fundamental rights of all Australians in Australian law. It's modelled closely on the Australian Bill of Rights 2001, introduced by the then member for Calwell, and is very similar to the Australian Bill of Rights 2017, which I introduced. In essence, the bill would render invalid any Commonwealth, state or territory law that's inconsistent with the Bill of Rights to the extent of that inconsistency. It would also specify that Commonwealth, state and territory laws should be interpreted so as to be consistent with the Bill of Rights. The bill allows for the Australian Human Rights Commission to inquire into any act or practice done by the Commonwealth or a state or territory government that may infringe on a right or freedom in the Bill of Rights. It also allows for people to make complaints to the Commission if they believe that an act or practice infringes a rights or freedom outlined in this bill. The bill would also give effect to a number of international agreements to which Australia is a signatory, including the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. Speaker, the importance of this bill is self-evident. We are the only democratic nation without any sort of bill or charter of rights. What domestic legislation we do have is scarce and far too narrow. Indeed, there are only 5 relevant acts in this country that attempt to protect human rights. That's the Human Rights Commission Act, which is really just about regulating the Commission, the Racial Discrimination Act, the Sex Discrimination Act, the Age Discrimination Act, and the Disability Discrimination Act. Yes, Speaker, the government is intending to add to this flimsy framework by introducing a religious discrimination bill. But perversely, such an act would in fact further restrict human rights in this country, which begs the question, why introduce a piece of legislation that promotes special rights for particular groups of people rather than supporting a piece of legislation that will promote the rights of all Australians? The only effective way to protect the rights of all Australians is to establish a single, strong and reliable framework as described in my bill today. The bottom line is that we still need a national Bill of Rights that protects and promotes unalienable human rights, such as the right to health care, the right to housing, the right to education, and the right to equal treatment within society. And the attacks on press freedom, and the unprecedented difficulties in accessing fundamental services such as housing and healthcare. None of this should be happening in Australia, and it only does so because we don't have an overarching framework to protect our rights. Surely it's unthinkable that in a supposedly free and democratic country like Australia, the government's police force is raiding media organisations and trying to suppress freedom of the press. That demonstrates why Article 4 of this Bill of Rights is important, to enshrine a right to freedom of expression and freedom of the press. Speaker, we also need a Bill of Rights because of the appalling way Indigenous people are treated in this country. Now, I don't need to list all of the statistics about things like incarceration rates because we've heard them all before. But it's patently obvious that many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people aren't being afforded their basic human rights. Article 10 of this bill, though, would specifically enshrine the rights of Indigenous peoples, as well as many other sections of the bill, as well as in many other sections of the bill that would help improve the lives of Indigenous Australians. And Speaker, what about the atrociously high rates of homelessness in this country? Article 23 of this bill would enshrine a right to an adequate standard of living, including clothing and housing. In closing, I would just like to say that when I first tabled this bill in 2017, the response from the community was overwhelmingly positive. Some people couldn't believe we didn't already have a Bill of Rights. Others knew that it was about time to introduce one. But despite all of that, neither the government nor the opposition supported the bill in what was another striking example of their failure to represent the community. So today, Speaker, I urge both the Liberal and Labor parties to reconsider their stubborn opposition and to wake up and to realise that we need to stop lagging behind the rest of the world and to stop allowing our rights and freedoms to be eroded.
Okay, so there we go. Hopefully I'll just bring audio back so that I can hear this, and I'll cut back to the camera. So because I'm just about done, I think, in relation to that. So there's an example again, just to show you that particular piece there goes back to 2019, and I should be able to get the audio headphones in here. 2019, hopefully you have the audio coming out, which it looks like it do. I am going to be ending the stream shortly, only because I wasn't really prepared for this, and I only have one battery for the camera, and the main setup is the other side of the studio. But what you just saw there is that Andrew Wilkie, Tasmanian MP, who was talking back in 2019 in introducing a Bill of Rights, and he highlighted saying that we are the only Western democracy. I wasn't actually aware of that. I knew that we were one of the few that didn't. Plenty of comments coming in saying that we do, but all of the premiers made a new law. Well, you know, I guess you're talking what you've just seen Andrew Wilkie talking in federal parliament about the Bill of Rights. I guess my point is this. My point is, rather than the voice to Parliament, which talks, which is divisive, that by introducing a Bill of Rights, as you've just seen, Andrew Wilkie spoke for about 20 minutes on that particular motion, I think 25 minutes. I've just played you about 5.5 minutes of the main key points, which I edited down from that when he tried to table that motion for the Bill of Rights. That was his second attempt. It went all the way through to a vote, and then the pandemic kicked off in March, and then it's been parked. So that is that's I guess it's just a proposition or a take that I'm putting out there, that rather than talking about the voice Bill of Rights, had we had a Bill of Rights and had we had the opportunity to take remedy with the federal government in relation to a civil tort, that's a wrong, and that could be as simple as saying that we are going to. Now, I guess the federal government had the stance that what's his name, Morrison, came out and said we're not going to mandate against the vaccine, but he gave the ammunition to the state premiers to pull the trigger in relation to that. But had there been the Bill of Rights with an opportunity to take remedy with the government, then the pathway for a person to do that is straightforward, and you don't have to look at things like class action. And there's a very good reason why the government then voted down or are not talking about the Bill of Rights that has power for individuals, every Australian, to take remedy. That's my take on it. And there we go. So a quick impromptu live stream. Thank you very much to those that have been watching and commenting, sitting at the desk, editing away as I do with the news in the background, heard that this was going to happen, and then thought, oh my God, I need to get out and live stream this. So I appreciate those that have stuck with the stream, and a few tech issues, not perfect, but that's what happens when it's live and impromptu. And I guess on the good news is I've just sort of recently got a couple of other pieces of kit to really make the live streams a lot easier and looking on point, and also with some cameras and equipment. That's the reason why I couldn't go the other side, because I'm just still in the process of running cables. Always plenty of things to do, but I think with that, and I appreciate the comments that have been coming through, it certainly will be the talk of the town for some time. So with Mark McGowan resigning, the next question will be who will fill his shoes, and what the case will be. Having a quick scour online to see what the press is saying in relation to this. Let me just shut this down. I think nothing that we haven't already discussed, and those at watching the stream haven't already commented. And we have seen from the ABC bringing some commentary from some, we just saw Patrick Gorman a little bit earlier, and of course, being a Labor man, WA Labor man at that as well, they're not going to say the things that we'll probably never know. So let's just have a quick scour to see any other headlines before I sign off and get a big glass of water. Okay, it just seems most of the headlines on the news are just talking about, some of them are behind paywalls. I don't really have access to some of these, but the flavour in terms of the headline seems to be that he's resigning because he feels exhausted. So we know what that leaks, and exhausted again, just to recap, he leaves with the golden handshake of $250,000 for the rest of his life, and additional perks as well. So on that note, I think I am going to say once more, thank you for those that have joined in and watched. Thank you for those that have commented. I appreciate that. I always try and go back through and take the time to read them. I don't hide and delete comments unless they are particularly of a violent nature, I should say. But I do, unfortunately, because of spam, have had to put in a control where those that post links, I can see the links, but they don't go out, because it just opens things up for people, not saying those that have commented, but people do spam the platform, and it's hard enough with shadow banning as it is. It takes a lot of work to get this content out. Anybody that does this will tell you that that's the case. It's always one issue after another, as you've probably seen in this live stream, trying to do that impromptu. Sometimes I think, well, I'll just go off the mobile phone. It's a little bit better, but we have got some exciting news that will be coming out shortly with Freedom Media. We're hopefully going to be having a whole new look, and that will be rolling out in the next couple of weeks. So thank you very much to those that have stuck with the technical difficulties in doing this impromptu stream. Appreciate the comments there about the coverage. I know that you can simply jump on to the mainstream media and watch it at home, but what I find particularly rewarding in this is the conversation that it generates, and that conversation is down to those of you at home watching the stream. And then when you're generating conversation amongst yourself, it keeps the conversation going a lot more, way more after the stream ends. And that's something that you simply can't do with the ABC coverage or Channel 7, because if it goes against community standards, they'll shut it down. And I'll just explain to you, we don't delete and hide comments here, apart from those with links. But the coverage comes down to those, and the interaction comes down to your comments, which really, really does, it's very rewarding to just see that, that there is people out there wanting to try and break down the real view. We've watched the press conference, and then you adding your comments with your thoughts, my thoughts, and there we go. So on that note, I think that's it from myself, Lindsay from Freedom Media WA. Thank you very much for watching.